Do you guys remember how the other day we were at Hollywood Studios and I asked a question about Disney's storytelling? I wanted to know if you think that Disney is still good at storytelling, or if you think that they can't really stand on their own 2 feet and they rely too heavily on those of us who are in the know to continue the story like it's some sort of oral tradition. Well, I'll tell you what, you guys shared some of your thoughts, which was fantastic. And today I thought that I would share some of my thoughts with you, and maybe you can expand out on some of the things that are bopping through your head, and we can keep this conversation going. So what brought this up, why I'm thinking about this at all, is because I was scrolling through my phone one day and I came across this piece of short form content. And it was from a channel or content creator, it's neither here nor there, that has a pretty big following. They seem to be pretty knowledgeable. I see them pop up on my feed every now and again, but I don't follow them, so who knows? You know what I mean? They may be knowledgeable, maybe not. It doesn't really matter. But anyway, they were here at Animal Kingdom and they were talking about something that I don't even remember. What I do remember though is that they focused in on this detail about Pandora World of Avatar, and they were saying that they don't really understand how Pandora World of Avatar fits within this park as a whole. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. Interesting take. Oh, there's the music. It shut off for a minute. I'm not sure why, but it's back. So enjoy the relaxing sounds in the background if you can hear them. Now, to be clear, I thought it was an interesting take, but I mean, I don't necessarily think it's a wrong take. Everyone has their own opinion and everyone enjoys the parks differently, right? So like, I don't want to make it seem like I'm criticizing their personal opinion, but I don't necessarily agree. We'll get more into that here in a bit. But anyway, I decided I'm going to scroll through the comments and see what other people have to say. And I noticed that a lot of people, they've got a lot of different things to say, but most of them agree. They don't understand why Pandora World of Avatar is at Animal Kingdom. It just doesn't make any sense to them. It doesn't fit in with the theme at all, in their opinion. And that really got me thinking. If all these people agree with this content creator that it doesn't make sense, why is that the case? I mean, of course, people can share opinions, but that's not what I mean when I ask why. I mean, this is, after all, a theme park, and they do lay the theme on pretty thick, so where do they fall short? Why doesn't it make sense to these people that it doesn't make sense to? Now, I have an opinion on this, and I want to share it with you, but first, let's take a step back. I want to tell you why I think that Pandora World of Avatar does absolutely fit in this park. Actually, I think it's a perfect fit for this park. And then I want to get a little bit more into why I think people don't get it, which, spoiler alert, isn't on them, at least not in my opinion. But like I said, let's start from the beginning. So first and foremost, we need to talk about why Pandora, in my opinion, fits. And by the way, you're welcome to disagree with me. I'd love to hear your thoughts. That's why we're doing this. We're having a conversation. But before we can really do that, we need to zoom out a little bit and talk about Animal Kingdom as a whole. So Animal Kingdom is one of those parks that I think is easy, well, it's easy to look over. People talk about that all the time. You know, it's a half-day park. There's nothing to do here. Like, they have so many things to say about Animal Kingdom that makes it easy to brush off. But it's really a very interesting theme park, and not far off of something that we have elsewhere here at the Walt Disney World Resort. In fact, I actually think that Animal Kingdom could be described as an extension of Epcot. I mean, there is an overarching theme, animals, and then there's like the underlying theme of conservation, but just the layout of the park itself, like walking around the park without knowing either of those two things, which are kind of hard to miss, particularly the whole animal thing. You're wandering around the world and you're getting a little taste of each place as you go, whether it's a taste of food or the culture. You get to learn a little bit about different places, but the gateway here is through animals as opposed to through the people like you get over at Epcot, where you can talk to cultural representatives, though every now and again you can find people here working at this park that are from places represented here, which is a pretty cool thing as well. Now, of course, this park is in a state of change, right? So not all of this still applies, but one of the things that you also got here in Animal Kingdom is this look at animals past, present, and future. Past being dinosaurs, present being pretty much the rest of the park, and future being Pandora World of Avatar. And I know that this sounds a little bit crazy because you're thinking to yourself like, well, will we really be on other planets in the future? Maybe. maybe not. We have no idea what that would look like. But isn't it cool that we have something that could represent that? Honestly, I think it is. And it closely resembles something that was supposed to be here at this park that we never got. Dragons. See, initially there was this whole like fantasy section of this park as well. It was very short-lived. I don't even know if some of the things made it past previews. But even so, today we still have mythical beasts that are represented here in the park. See the Yeti over at Expedition Everest. So even on a surface level, Pandora World of Avatar, it seems to make sense, at least in my opinion. But if you dig a little deeper, look a little closer, it makes sense in a few other ways as well. Conservation is a fantastic example of this. It's an overarching theme here at Disney's Animal Kingdom. You hear about it pretty much everywhere you go. They talk about conservation on Kilimanjaro safaris. We have the conservation station over at Rafiki's Planet Watch, and Pandora World of Avatar is no exception. If you ride Flight of Passage and go through the queue, but especially if you go through the pre-show, you're going to hear all about conservation and why we're on Pandora to begin with. We also hear about stripping land of its resources and how that impacts different species that live on that land. That's very much real. And we learn a little bit about how important outside support and cooperation can be, which is another thing that is very much real and happens every day. And that part of the story, the theming, I feel like that gets a little bit overshadowed nowadays as opposed to when the land first opened, because there's no streetmosphere. Now, I'm calling it streetmosphere for a lack of a better word, but there used to be performers who would perform and tell the story and explain about this, that, and the other right there in Pandora, World of Avatar. You know, like all those drums that sometimes kids will play on, that used to be a show.
Count! That is coming out the greeting, meaning hello. But in the heart of the valley where we are gathered is even more unique for its unmistakable connectivity with all that surrounds it.
That was what I would argue is part of the cultural exchange that guests like you and me would have had if we were visiting the land that is Pandora World of Avatar. Then there was a guy in one of those like big robotic suits that would tell you a little bit more about what was going on. I think they had a companion as well, and they would, talk to guests as they were wandering through the land about what was going on in this area.
We got lots of bugs here in Pandora. Have you seen any of them yet? I think there's actually a couple that are about your size. And I see you have a utility suit with wheels. I like that. Mine doesn't have wheels. This is prototype number 1. I'm hoping to get some wheels on it soon. But I don't know that wheels will really do me any good in the jungle.
And I think that kind of enhances the story as well and brings guests into the story in a way that they're just not brought in anymore because that no longer exists. But all this to say, I think that, at least from the perspective of someone who's been coming to this park since it opened, I think that Pandora, the World of Avatar, makes sense. And I'm not just saying that because I like the ride. I do think the Flight of Passage is a great ride, but just if you zoom out, it makes sense. It fits in with the theme perfectly. In fact, I argue that before they decided to get rid of Dinoland USA, it completed the park in a way that it had never been completed before. But where's the disconnect? That's really what this is all about, right? Now, I argue, and this is a part that I'm not sure about, okay? I'm just tossing this out there. I don't really have answers to all of the questions that I'm going to present you with today, but I like having conversations like this because I feel like we work things out and see things from different perspectives. So, that's what we're doing. I argue that this has something to do with storytelling, with Disney's inability to stand on their own 2 feet when it comes to storytelling. And maybe that's because of lightning lanes and cutting past cues so you don't get the full story, and the requirement of lightning lane, or the assumed requirement of a lightning lane in order to do the Disney theme parks. You're cutting past the theme to do the ride, but they're one and the same, at least in my opinion. But I also think that there's something to be said for the elimination of those storytelling elements. Like I mentioned with Pandora World of Avatar, when we talk about the drummers, when we talk about the robotic suit people, I don't know what their official name was, but when we take that out of the equation and we're not talking about those things, the theme, a good chunk of the theme in my opinion, goes away. And so now we're relying on someone else. We're relying on people like me or people like all the guests that I hear in the parks all the time, filling in their family on details and lore and story. I feel like the focus, the weight of storytelling falls on us. We're the ones who have to say, see, this is what this is about, to the people who are around us, so that they can be in on the story and ultimately pass that story along. Again, like an oral tradition. I feel like you can kind of see this over in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge as well. Now, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, okay? So keep that in mind. I'm a fan of the droids, mostly because I thought that they were pretty cool when I rode Star Tours as a kid, but I wasn't from like a Star Wars family or anything like that. Also, before I say what I'm about to say, I recognize that Hollywood Studios is a very disjointed park and it doesn't even know who it is, so you know, that might be part of the problem. But when you step into Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, there really is no storytelling. They're relying entirely on your fandom or other people who you might be with to tell you what the heck is going on. And I feel like that's super unfortunate because to the best of my knowledge, even though I don't know the story myself, there are like unique characters for that land. You know, the one with the purple hair and is it an orange or red jacket? I think that character is unique to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, but I don't know who they are, I don't know their name. I see them every now and again, but I don't know what's going on. Like there's no storytelling there that helps bring me into the story, which is the purpose of a theme park, isn't it? And of course, you can see other characters in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge as well. The Mandalorian is there, very well-known character. We have Grogu, which is like Baby Yoda. So even if you don't know them, like they're cute, they're a character, and you get to stumble into them maybe, but probably not because they're usually surrounded by a crowd. We have stormtroopers, who I think are probably the best storytelling element in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong on that or tell me if you disagree, but we have Kylo Ren, Chewbacca, Rey's there as well. So like there are characters that are wandering, but why are they wandering? What are they doing? It's very confusing if you're not already on the inside or if you're not visiting with someone who is. And again, I feel like that's an interesting choice for a theme park, but it's also a little disappointing in my opinion because it's a perfect opportunity to bring someone into a fandom that might not have gotten there on their own or aren't surrounded by people who do enjoy that thing, like me with Star Wars. Good storytelling at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge could make me a Star Wars fan. And from a business perspective, that seems like a great plan because maybe I think it's so cool that I have to go home and buy all 86 movies and then I have a t-shirt and I buy a lightsaber. You know how this goes, right? And that could of course be said for so many other things as well, right? Like for Avatar, for even the countries that you see here at Animal Kingdom or over in Epcot. I mean, I've said this before, but I'm sure there are people, I'm positive of it because I was one of them, who wander into a pavilion in Epcot and think to themselves, oh my God, I have to go see this place in real life. Of course, it was a different time back then. We didn't have these things. So you didn't get a chance to like take a look into other places and daily life of people living in those places and what it was like to travel to those places like you do now. But you know, I don't think that any of that really happens without the effort towards storytelling, without bringing the person in and really immersing them. I guess the next question, the obvious question, is how do you do that? I think there are a lot of different ways. There was a time where I feel like Disney was much better at it than they are now. Of course, with things like Streetmosphere, the citizens of Main Street, the citizens of Hollywood, all things that have since vanished into thin air. I do also think that it would be relatively easy to bring those back. Obviously, there are challenges when it comes to hiring people and, you know, money's involved, all of that. You guys know how I feel about that type of thing when it comes to making a certain product. Of course, if you go away from making that product, if you don't want to provide the same level of service, then that's a decision that you make as a company and, you know, it all goes from there. You slip away from theme park and into amusement park, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, I think it's It's mostly about mindset and understanding what it is that you're doing, right? And I don't mean like functionally understanding it, but like, why are you here? Like, why is Disney here? What are they trying to accomplish? I feel like if what they're trying to accomplish is immerse people, then you have to have people who are making decisions that understand what that means. They need to be willing to take the risks to go to places like people who built Animal Kingdom did. There's a level of something, I don't know what word I want to put here, but I feel like it wants to be care. Like there's a level of, that just isn't here anymore. And maybe that's going to change. These things ebb and flow. So I don't want to sit here and make it sound like I'm saying like they can never recover from this, because I definitely don't believe that to be true. But what does recovery even look like? You know, you're not going to ever bring everyone along for the ride. There are people who are never going to stop and read every single sign. They're never going to watch every single behind the scenes. They're not going to, I don't know, go into every little corner and go, oh, did you see that detail? But there are going to be people who aren't as interested in that because they don't have the time, they don't have the energy, they don't have the interest, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I still think that there should be a certain amount of effort toward bringing those people into the story as well. You know, like different levels of it. But I don't feel like the storytelling should be leaning as heavily as it currently does on the guest. Even if that guest is someone like me, who knows the story and is happy to pass it on and have conversations with people like you. I mean, that is great, you know, having conversations and sharing this stuff is fun. I like doing it. I'm sure you guys do as well, but I just don't think that it should be the only way that the story of these places is passed on. But I want to know what you guys think, because I don't really have an answer here. These are just my thoughts. I'm just chatting with you. But I'd love to know what you guys have to say, whether you agree with me or not, you know? I know there are some people who said that they don't get the hype of Avatar, like they don't understand why it was like seen as such a big deal as it was. I feel like that's kind of generational. I hate saying that, but it was such a big deal when it first came out. Do you guys remember when Avatar first came out? And it was like, we'd never seen anything like it. And it took forever to make, and it was just visually amazing. I even remember when they first announced that they were going to make it a land here, and I was like, there's no possible way they could make it as cool as the movie, because the movie was fantastic. Like, just visually, it was amazing. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on all of this. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And yeah, just all of the things that are going through your head when it comes to this. Are you someone who likes to immerse themselves in the story and the experience here at Walt Disney World or wherever it is that you visit? Or are you more of a passive visitor? Are you someone who just like wanders through for the thrills? Also, are you someone who is telling the stories? Are you filling in the family on what the theme of this place is, what the story of this place is, wherever it is that you happen to be, you know? I want to hear all your thoughts. I want to hear it all. So pop it in the comments. But for now, I think I'm off. It has been so nice sitting here with you and having this conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. Stay tuned, because I'm sure we're going to have many more conversations like this to come. But I'm getting a little hungry. I think it's almost time for lunch. There are so many great options here today, but I've got one planned that I think you guys are going to like. Anyway, more on that later. Until next time, guys. Bye.